Yeah, so the problem with the treated sewage, because the water that for those that don't know, the actually I could probably be kind of cool to bring up a map and share the where all this is happening for people that don't know. Let me bring up a map and I'll share my screen with everyone.
Yeah, if you can get the one screen cap that you used to just show the mouth of the river too, so
oh yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
give a perspective there.
Let me share my screen with everyone so everyone kind of has an idea where we're at. So for people that aren't IB locals, um, here's San Diego. Here's downtown. Here's Coronado, and down south of Coronado is Imperial Beach. And if Imperial Beach is the most southwesterly city in the United States, so you can't go any further west, or you'll get wet, and you can't go any further south, or you'll be in Mexico. So right here's the border of US and Mexico. Here's Imperial Beach. Here's the 5. If you've ever crossed into Mexico, you've taken the 5 and probably gone through San Isidro. Now, just south of Imperial Beach is a large estuary, and that estuary is fed by the river that runs through Tijuana. Now, this Tijuana runs about 10 miles through Tijuana, all the way up to this lake, and there's a big dam up here. This is the Rodriguez Dam, and then it creates the river that runs all the way through, right where along the Via Rápida, runs all the way through Tijuana. Now there's a couple treatment plants up here, and the water they put out is really good water, but they dump it out into the river channel, which allows stuff to carry further. So if they weren't dumping all that clean water in, all those toxic chemicals and sewage wouldn't be coming across the border. So what happens is the river comes right across the border right here. If you've ever been to the outlet centers, it goes right by the outlet center. And then the river continues on into the estuary where it forms into large tributaries and then spills out into the ocean here. So you notice that the border is here. And if you've ever been down there, you've seen the fence that goes out into the water. But this is about a mile north of the border is where the Tijuana River mouth exits into the Pacific Ocean. And that is also about a mile south of Imperial Beach. So not only does Imperial Beach and Coronado get polluted, but the Playas de Tijuana, the beach of Tijuana, gets polluted as well. So, and they don't put out signs like we do. So the public in Tijuana don't know that they're being poisoned.
Yeah, the other thing on that is in Mexico, about a few miles south of Tijuana is the Punta Bandera,
Yeah.
quote, sewage treatment plant. The only treatment it does is collect it and dump it out raw into the ocean. And
that's down over just south of Rosarito, right?
yeah, and when we have a south swell, that sewage comes up from Mexico
Right.
into the United States waters. So it's really an international issue.
It is. Yep, absolutely. So it's about 10 after, a little more than 10 after. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to mute everybody. And what we could do is, y'all know how to use Zoom. There's the little chat thing down there at the bottom. If you have questions, go ahead and kind of raise your hand in the chat. Just say, hey, have a question or something like that. And we'll go ahead and get started. And I mean, I don't know how the light is doing right now, but I don't know. The light look good? How's that on the wall? You guys see that poster pretty good?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, cool. Right on. Well, let me go ahead and mute everybody and we'll get started. Okay. All right. So I wanted to start with this really cool poster that was gifted to me by Mario Toretto. I thought he was going to be on today, and I wanted to thank him personally on the screen. But I had helped Mario out with an issue, and he's one of the original muralists from the Barrio Logan. You know, if you go down there, he's got a couple murals from that he painted in the '60s, and he's, you know, really, really just he's an out there kind of guy. You hang out with him, and you're like, whoa, I think I just did mushrooms. He's just super old school, like just on a different plane, But he's a fantastic artist, and he paints every year. He paints a poster for the Chicano Park Days. This is a print from one of the posters that he created, and I'm just so stoked. I don't know where I'm going to put it yet. We're in my bedroom, by the way, so you're all. I don't think you probably woke up today thinking you're going to be in William Bay's bedroom with 12 other people. We got a little art orgy going on here. So yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going to put it. Maybe over my printer over here, but we'll see. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. My friend Sarah Bella dropped that, our mutual friend Sarah dropped that off yesterday, and yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I'm really excited about that one. So I don't have a Vanna White, so I am your lovely assistant. Will be taking the pictures and putting them up on the wall as we go through this. And I'll probably share when we get into the parts per million stuff. I'll probably share the screen so you can see each picture in a little bit more detail. So let's go through the first item. So my plan was for the exhibition in March to share a couple images, a little bit more experimental that I've been working with before, almost like a palette cleanser to kind of get you in the mood. So this is part of a series called Magdalena. Let's make sure that you guys can see that okay. There we go. There we are. So this is, I do mostly black and white work, but I occasionally will do some color for certain projects. And this is a project I wanted to do. These photos were all taken in Baja, and this is part of one of 40 in this series. And the idea is very inspired by like Mark Rothko or Howard Hodgkins, actual like painters. I don't like to think of myself as just a photographer. I like to think of myself as an artist, and so I really look for inspiration in other people. And Mark Rothko is actually a rather famous a painter from like the mid-century modern era of art, and he's probably one of my favorite artists, if not my favorite artist ever. And I think that might even include photographers. So the idea was to not look at subject matter as so much as to throw everything out of focus and create a mood, right? So that's kind of the idea behind this style of imagery that I do. And this was, like I said, it was taken down to Baja, one of 40 in a story that I created called Magdalena. And the idea is to eventually have this as an exhibit as well. And the photos I do have in parts per million are for sale. If anyone's interested, these right here, this one and the next one aren't for sale because they're kind of an experiment in presentation, and I haven't quite worked out how that's going to, you know, what the final result of that is. They're not archival. They're like, you know, like spray mounted on foam core on top of these. What did I use? Mahogany? No, walnut. I used walnut, and I built these frames, if you will, to kind of hold. Let me see if I can move this close, and we can see they're kind of offset and floating from the backing there. So yeah, that's kind of the deal with that. So this one was from a series called Magdalena. This next one is from a series I call Low Light, and this one was taken in Imperial Beach. And again, the idea is to just, you know, like really looking for mood more than subject matter. This one, I don't know. I just at these at some point I just call them low light number whatever. I don't remember which number this one is. So not that it matters. Not that it matters much. But yeah, so this I started this kind of this idea, this style of shooting in Imperial Beach, which, you know, I don't know how many of you know me that well, but I grew up in Imperial Beach. I started photographing and surfing my freshman year of high school at Mar Vista, and I've just been photographing ever since. Imperial Beach, uh, Tijuana, Baja, like all that is more of a they're all very kind of like an inspiration to me in my work. So you'll see like the parts per million was all Imperial Beach. These, you know, are kind of formulated in Imperial Beach as well. Glenda, no, I mentioned that these are more experimental right now. They will be when I kind of finalize the presentation format. And because right now they're not archival, so I can't really like, you know, sell them to collectors or anything like that. Unfortunately, like I have to figure out an archival way of presenting these images because they're floating and the prints need to be like archival quality so that they'll like not, you know, die after, you know, 10 years or something like that. So but the parts per million stuff is for sale. Let me go ahead and start with that. Actually, let's pull up the first parts per million. So I'll hang this, and then I'll go ahead and try to create the kind of the backdrop for the project. So, hey, Antoine just showed up. Cool. So first, I want to thank. There was a number of people that sponsored a number of these images to have this exhibition put together in the first place. I just wanted to thank them. There's a couple people that did sponsor on the call here today on the Zoom. So initially, what I had created was was like a group fundraising, so I can get this whole thing printed and framed and ready to be exhibited. Unfortunately, it was about 2 days before the exhibition back in March where we had to cancel it due to COVID, which was very devastating to me. It was one of those nights where I'm like, I'm just going to drink a pint of Captain Morgan tonight. Let's just get it all out. So let's see here. Is there any glare on the picture? Anyone want to let me know if there's any glare, any issues seeing the image there? No glare. Okay, Betsy says no glare. Cool. So yeah, so it was rather unfortunate, but you know, I wanted to do this to thank everyone that sponsored prints and still be safe and still have an exhibition. So you know, that's kind of why we're doing it here in my bedroom on Zoom. So I'm very happy that everyone contributed. And now that this is, when we do this, I'm gonna get these all shipped out to the people that sponsored them. So the plan was anyone that wanted to buy or sponsor a print, they would get a 10 by 15 print for $100. And you know, they can spend another 100 if they wanted the frame. So there are people that sponsored that. So the sponsored prints are I'm still honoring that $100 price. Not all of these got sponsored, and I don't want to turn this into like a huge salesy thing, but this isn't a Tupperware party. But you know, just in case anyone's interested before we get rolling. So these are still $100 if anyone wants them. There are some that weren't sponsored. They're essentially my artist proofs, and then I have an addition to prints that are 16 by 24. You'll see those. Those are the big ones that I'll be pulling up here in a couple minutes. Those are edition prints, and they start at $350, and then each one that's sold, it goes up $50. So it's just kind of like a way to increase the value with each sale of the prints. So you'll see the 16 by 24s here in a minute, but I just wanted to get that sales pitch out of the way. I'm going to share my screen again and kind of go through like a little bit of the essay that I wrote. So to get everyone kind of in the right context for where this project started, why I did it, and kind of the inspiration from it all. So this is on my website at williambay.com. If anyone wants to read along, you can. It's just the parts per million section. And I was down shooting at the river mouth for another reason, for just to be out photographing one day, and I started. I noticed all these patterns in the river mouth as the river water mixed with the ocean water, and I'm like, I started taking some pictures, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. At the beginning, I didn't think much of it, but when I got home, I thought, oh, there's something here. I'm gonna kind of play around with these, and I took a few pictures, and I'm like, oh, this could be kind of cool. And eventually it became this whole project. But the parts per million name comes from a Bad Religion song. And we'll get kind of into why that, the Bad Religion plays into it. But it's called Unacceptable. It's off of Against the Grain, the album. And let me just read this essay to you. So if you were a surfer in Southern California in the 90s, punk rock was a part of the soundtrack of your youth. It could be heard on almost any surf flick you turned on for your pre-sesh amp. It was the peak of the Momentum generation, and Taylor Steele's movies introduced the world to Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, and that tight-knit crew of surfers that would go on to dominate professional surfing, all to the backdrop of Bad Religion songs like Walk Away, Quality or Quantity, and Unacceptable, a hard-edged protest against the destruction of our environment in the name of progress. If you were a surfer in Imperial Beach in the 90s, you or one of your friends invariably got sick. Hepatitis, ear infections, acute gastroenteritis were the common ones. Most of us knew to stay out of the water after a rain, and when the Tijuana River mouth was flowing, brown and stinky water was a strong deterrent. But a solid northwest swell and no one out was also tempting enough to risk it. The joke in IB was that we had developed superior immune systems to deal. We were the modern day Achilles dipped into a river Styx of raw sewage. When NAFTA opened the door for US businesses to operate in Mexico, many jumped at the chance to take advantage of the cheap labor and the lack of EPA regulations. As a result, the runoff from Tijuana, which up till then was mostly untreated sewage, began to include volatile chemicals and heavy metals. Today, with the population growth of Tijuana, the toxic cross-border flows don't just happen during the winter storms, but have become a daily occurrence. Not one of the responsible agencies were willing to report what was in the water for fear of the responsibility of dealing with it. The EPA and International Boundary Water Commission were content with allowing the toxic soup of effluent and chemicals to cross into the United States, where beach cities like Imperial Beach and Coronado would be forced to issue beach closures. Border Patrol agents working in the Tijuana River Valley had become increasingly sick and developing skin conditions while in contact with water and mud. As a result, in 2018, the Border Patrol conducted a 6-month water quality study. The findings were far worse than anyone had imagined. The photos in this project were all taken at the mouth of the Tijuana River, where polluted river water spills into the Pacific Ocean. As the tide rises and falls, river mixes with ocean, and ocean mixes with river. Beautiful patterns, ripples, shapes, and textures emerge in the confluence. Despite the beauty, the water is full of illness, infection, and death. Each photo in this project was selected to represent one of the 28 contaminants found in the Border Patrol Water Quality Report. With each photo, you'll find the name of the contaminant, the parts per million, health consequences, and how many times above the EPA acceptable level has been found in each one unacceptable. So this first one is called benzidine. Benzidine is used to make dyes, and it's been shown to cause cancer in humans. if it comes in contact with your skin, it can cause skin allergies. So, so this is a conceptual, each one of these photos is conceptual. It's not meant to say, hey, I could see benzidine in the water right there. It's made to, you know, this photo was taken to represent benzidine, right? Benzidine is the first one because it's been found at 445,000 times above the EPA standard for water. So it comes across. So I don't know if you know how they do water testing at the beaches, but they only test for bacteria. This exceeds the bacteria loads by like magnitudes. So benzidine is a cancer-causing chemical, and it flows across and into our ocean where people swim and surf. Yeah. Let me. What I'll do is for each one of these, I'll share my screen so that you can see the photo with a little better detail. Let's go ahead and that'll give me the opportunity to switch out to the next photo. So this is the photo for benzidine. And while y'all are looking at that, I'll switch out to the next one. Okay. Cool. Any questions or anything you guys want to know? Throw it in the chat, and I'll talk about it, or unmute you, and we can, you know, have a conversation about it. Let's see here. So this next one is Enterococcus. So the first one that you saw, benzidine, that one went unsponsored. If anyone's interested, like I said before, some of these were sponsored and some of them aren't. This one is sponsored by Gwen Giese. So this one's called Enterococcus. Enterococcus is a bacteria, and there are more indicators of the presence of fecal matter in the water, and therefore so it's an indicator. So it kind of it indicates that there is potential for disease-causing bacteria, viruses, and protozoa. And I know Cheryl, earlier we were talking about, I don't know if she might have fallen off. Cheryl had talked about that there's been cases where studies have found COVID actually in raw sewage. And this is kind of one of those things where you would find those viruses in Enterococcus is like an indicator that would indicate that that there's presence of that. And the bacterias aren't really measured by parts per million or those things. They're actually measured by most probable numbers. So I guess they have to grow the bacteria cultures to kind of determine how much is in there. And the most probable number that they've given indicates that this is 28,000 times what San Diego water quality is. So Enterococcus, you know, that comes across the border into our ocean is 28,000 times what it is like supposed to be. Let's see, what else about that? Oh, and the for the next two, E. coli and fecal coliform, there's a point when you're measuring bacteria that the number that you get it won't measure anything higher. So it's kind of like you've pegged the upper limit, the ceiling of that measurement. When we get to E. coli and fecal coliform, those are two that actually there could be more. It just like they couldn't test for anything higher because the actual amount exceeded the test, which is just insane. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop over to Lightroom and we'll look at inner caucus and we'll do a little sharing. Is this format working for people? Like, is everyone good with this? Let's see here. Let me get up the next photo and we'll do it up. Okay. Sweet, cool. So this one is, it looks like there might be a little bit of glare on that. This one is called E. coli. And this is one of the bigger ones. This is the 16 by 24 size. This is the size that the limited editions come in. How's that glare okay, or is it too strong? I can probably turn down my screen a little bit and hide that. Cool. Sweet. Okay, cool. So like I said, this one is E. coli. This is the first picture that I took in the series. This is the inspiration for everything. After I took this, I thought, oh, there's something really cool here. And initially, I mentioned like, you know, I've spent most of my life as a black and white photographer, and people have asked me why I didn't go, you know, to color and like have it all be pretty. And you know, that's not really the mood that I wanted to create when you're, you know, in this particular topic, right? The topic, I wanted it to be kind of a little depressing, a little subdued, a little bit more introspective. And so a lot of these images are kind of heavy, black, very like, you know, kind of dark, and bring you into like have that gravitas come through in the imagery. But I mean, they are kind of pretty in color, I will say that, but that wasn't really what I was going for. So E. coli has been found at 12,400 times San Diego water quality studies. It's the most probable number that I mentioned earlier, where it was pegging the limit, and it couldn't you know, get any more detail on how high this actually was. It was 2,420,000 MPN, most probable number. That's the upper limit of that. There's ways to go like dilute and test it further, but that's not typically what like the water quality standards of San Diego County really do. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So the bacteria loads in our water like exceed the water quality testing, you know, that we can do pretty much in San Diego County. So diseases acquired from contact with contaminated water from E. coli can cause gastrointestinal illnesses, skin, ear, and respiratory, eye, neurologic, and wound infections. It's just a soup of nastiness is really what it is. It's a poop soup. I mean, this is just, you know, what comes out in our water on a daily basis now. And this is my sister Bonnie Weatherford sponsored this print. That's who sponsored this. So she's not here today with us, but you know, thanks to my sister. All right. So let me go ahead and switch over so you could see this one in detail. Okay. Cool. Let's. You guys see that okay? All right. I'm going to switch this one out now. So you'll love the name of this next one. Oh, thank you, Antoine. So you'll love the name of this next one. It's fecal coliform. So these three together are all the bacterias. Antoine says, "Yum, nice." Um, these are all the bacterial loads. So it's these are the three kind of whammies that most water agencies will measure for like determining whether water quality is safe or not. Um, Chemical testing and heavy metal testing isn't done as much, and with San Diego County, they don't test for that, which we should be, because like I said, benzidine is a chemical, and it's higher in concentration than the bacteria load. So there's no doubt benzidine, and it's not like a heavy metal, so it may not be like going down through the water column on the way out through the river. So benzidine is likely in our water in the summers, in the winters when things are flowing. But yeah, like I said, most water quality agencies only are testing for the bacteria for water safety. But this one again, 2,420,000 mpm. That's again pegging the upper limit of the ability for these tests to even measure. So there's way more than what the standard here for fecal coliform is 2,420 times the San Diego water quality limits on safe water. So it's far exceeding that. Cool. Let me go ahead and share the screen. And so this one is fecal coliform. See if we can get rid of this. Just click it. There is a way to get rid of this, right? Where's all my Lightroom geeks? Show filter bar, not that one. Group info. Is that it? There we go. Cool. All right. So that was fecal coliform. And we have another big one now. Okay. That looks. That looks right. Okay. Yeah, Antoine said, press F. I should have been looking at the chat window. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, just shoot me a message in the chat. We'll go through it. So this one's called hexavalent chromium. Did anyone watch Aaron Brockovich, the movie? So in Aaron Brockovich, the town of Hinckley had hexavalent chromium in their water table. And that was, they discovered that it was PG&E that was Pacific Gas and Electric were like not lining their tanks well enough. So the hexavalent chromium that they were using was leaching into the water table and poisoning people that were drinking the water. So this is actually in our water as well. And if you remember, I had mentioned that NAFTA and like U.S. industry coming in and companies working in Tijuana, we suspect that that's where this is coming from. Hexavalent chromium is used in circuitry and stuff like that. So it's suspicion that that's where hexavalent chromium is coming from in our water. And the hexavalent chromium is 1,100 times above the EPA standard. This is coming in our water, and it is a heavy metal, so it's possible that it's going through the water column and getting filtered out through the Tijuana River, but at 1,100 times EPA standard, you have to assume that some is coming through onto the beaches and destroying marine life and degrading surfers and swimmers health. So exposure to hexavalent chromium compounds is associated with increased risk of lung cancer and cancer of the paranasal sinuses and nasal cavity. So, I mean, if you've ever surfed, you get in the water, you get, kind of that water lodged up in your sinuses, and you bend over and everything comes flooding out. We call that naso drain. Surfers love that feeling. Or you go surfing and then you go to yoga and you do down dog and your mat is completely wet with naso drip. Yeah, that's yeah, all that water does get lodged up in your sinuses. So you can imagine if there's hexavalent chromium in the water that it's actually doing something to you. So very, very just disturbing levels of heavy metals and toxins in the water. This was sponsored by Marima Helic, or I don't know how you pronounce that, Helic, might be Czech, Helic. But she's a local San Diego photographer, just really great person. Was very excited when she sponsored that print. So let me go ahead and share the screen so you can get a better view of it. And this is hexavalent chromium. Okay. So this is arsenic. Yeah, so this is arsenic. Let's see. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate that. Hey, John Morales made it. Are you on the beach in your motorhome, John, just hanging out and working? Is that what you're doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
Yep. Yeah, the motorhome didn't make it to the beach today.
Are you being arrested right now?
Well, it's possible.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to mute you. If you have any questions, throw something in the chat, and that's just kind of how we've been working so far. But glad you're here.
Cool.
Okay. This is arsenic, and this was sponsored by Chip and Bethany Case. The Imperial Beach locals probably recognize Chip and Bethany Case's name. Chip works at Mar Vista, and Bethany runs the Red House Kitchen on 13th Street. And they were very kind to sponsor this print. So this is arsenic, and this is found at 712 times above the EPA standard. And ingesting very high levels of arsenic can result in death. How about that? Exposure to lower levels can cause nausea and vomiting, decreased production of red and blood cells. This is not just this doesn't just affect surfers and swimmers in Imperial Beach, but this actually, this stuff goes through people's backyards in Tijuana. And this project is really about, bringing to light, this is not just a bunch of surfers complaining. I mean, that is, a large part of it. But, people in Tijuana, this is going through their backyards, through the streets, through, through the alleyways. Kids are playing in this. This is a public health crisis, and it starts in Tijuana, and it's really it's the blame has to be put on the government of Tijuana and Baja. And, you know, this isn't just the people of Tijuana, the Tijuanenses, this isn't their fault. They're actually, they're victims in this, and much more so than the surfers in Imperial Beach and Coronado. This is something that really has to be addressed, and it's an international thing. So it's very hard for us, for United States to you know, swing a big stick and make something happen when the source of this is the lack of infrastructure, the lack of, you know, political motivation to get this thing resolved. Fortunately, with the new mayor of Tijuana, the new governor of Baja, and the new president in Mexico, they're all part of the same political party, which does make things a little bit easier to accomplish. Much more so than just Democrats and Republicans in America. It's very, very hard, like almost impossible to get stuff done. You know, in Mexico when you're in opposing parties. Alex, you're correct. Everything goes up the food chain too. So, you know, you have smaller fish that eat this, bigger fish. Then, you know, if you're fishing off the pier in Imperial Beach, which I don't know why you would now, you know, like it's, you know, you're eating that with the bonito and the whatever else that you're catching off the pier. It does go up the food chain. Yeah, very, very sad. But yeah, this is not just a bunch of surfers complaining. This is, you know, a public health crisis on both sides of the border. So let me go ahead and share this one so you can see it. And oops, that's not what I want. This is what I want. Okay, so that is arsenic. Okay. This next one is called Mycoprop. It's abbreviated MCPP, and it's an herbicide, so it's kind of like Roundup. So this is at 48 times the EPA standard. This is used to kill, you know, vegetation and that sort of thing. It's a study of people employed in the manufacture of phenoxy herbicides, including Mycoprop, showed an association between the herbicides and cancer of soft tissues and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Mycoprop is very toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. And there you go again, Alex. Yeah, like it affects the entire food chain. So, you know, impacting aquatic life is, you know, just terrible. Let me share the screen for you. So this is Mycoprop, or MCPP. So this next one is this next one is another herbicide called MCPA, and it's been found at 32 times EPA standard. MCPA is a systemic phenoxy herbicide. Symptoms from acute exposure include slurred speech, twitching, jerking, and spasms, and drooling, low blood pressure, and unconsciousness. So that's fun. John, I'm going to unmute you, and let me just kind of dig in more on your question here.
Yes.
There we go. So yeah, so you asked if I was going to talk about the creative and photographic process. Do you have something specific in mind?
Well, I'm just curious. You're talking about the sort of the, I guess the physics or the actual physical properties of this. But I'm also curious about your photography,
Mm-hmm.
how you paired each image with the particular toxin, and just your general approach, your creative approach to this as well.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's a really great question. Let me I'll talk about that by sharing a photo that you guys have already seen. So this one was this was the first one that I took here. This was the one I called E. coli. And when I got home and I was looking at it, kind of like all this stuff, the Border Patrol report that I had read, and all these toxins that were in the water, and then this, these kind of photos that I stumbled upon in the river mouth that was, I didn't even have the concept yet at the time. Um, and I was looking at this, I'm like, oh, you know what? This looks like if you were looking in the microscope and you looked at E. coli, like what like E. coli would look like, with these kind of concentric rings and kind of like this, weird, almost an S curve going through it. I'm like, that kind of looks like some viral thing, some kind of what E. coli would look like. And that was kind of where where I started to develop the concept for it. And then with this one's Enterococcus, and this is I'm down there shooting, and I'm just a lot of times I'm just on burst mode. I'm just like taking rapid photos, and anticipating certain things happening with the water. But this really kind of virulent and turbulent picture just made me think of like what Enterococcus does to the body. The same thing with hexavalent chromium. It was just like this very just visceral attacking of the body, which hexavalent does with cancer and that sort of thing. Some of them have like absolutely no like no rhyme or reason. Like why this one would be arsenic. This one is just just a beautiful pattern that I found, and I'm like, hey, let's call this Mycoprop. And then some are like when we get into some of these others, like here are these V's or like almost letter shapes. So I'm like, oh, let's use that for I forget what some of these were, but like I would just be like, hey, let's use these because it looks like a particular letter. But yeah, so, and a lot of these were, like I said, they were just all shot on burst mode. All these were done with an 85 millimeter lens on my old digital camera. So I don't have like great gear or anything. So I just make great images with kind of mediocre equipment. I don't know if that answers your question, or if you
Yeah, I like hearing about your process, and as you're going through them, if you want to share any details about that, I'm all ears.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, so Alex said he could see the same thing, like that E. coli sitting in the petri dish with bacteria colonies. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, I was like from sitting in a petri dish. Yeah. So yeah, this one is which one is this? Is this MCPA? I think. Let's see. I might have got lost. Let me get back in the Lightroom here. Mycoprop. Yeah, this one's MCPA. So this is again another herbicide, and yeah, I saw Antoine said that your daily basis is feeling like you have slurred speech, twitching, jerking, spasms, drooling, blood pressure, and unconsciousness. Yeah, right on. Okay, let's go ahead and switch out to another one. Let me share my screen. Oh, yeah, he says dealing with the kids is what causes that. Him and Glenda have two little adorable wee ones. Oh, that one is good. So in addition to photographing these and learning about all these chemicals and what they do to people and their body and their, you know, physiology, I had to learn how to like say some of these names. So this one's bromodichloromethane, which it's like a 40-letter long word. Okay, not that many, but it seems like it. Antoine, the one that you sponsored is towards the end. It's called antimony, and I think you just picked that one because it was close to your name. So this one is dibromochloromethane. It's 17.7 times above the EPA standard. In animals, the main effect of eating and drinking large amounts of bromodichloromethane, abbreviated BDCM, is injury to liver and kidneys. There is some evidence that BDCM can be toxic to developing fetuses, but this has not been well studied. Again, you know, talk about the public health issue in Tijuana. Well, I forget the actual statistic, but it's somewhere around 10 times the number of stillbirths that San Diego has. So Tijuana has 10 times the number of stillbirths that San Diego does. Again, it's they're breathing the fumes from the off-gassing from this raw sewage going through people's, you know, yards, streets, backyards. Like this is obviously a contributing factor, not necessarily, you know, bromodichloromethane, but it's you know, just the raw sewage going through these streets and colonias, and I mean just regular old neighborhoods, you know, like me and Isidro, who I use to translate because I don't speak fluent Spanish. We will go down there and we'll go to some of the colonias, just a regular old neighborhood in Tijuana. It's not like a favela or anything like that, or like a, you know, like a really, you know, poor town, poor area, just a regular old neighborhood, like middle class Tijuana. This stuff is just, you know, sewers are backed up. It's really like there's always the smell of hydrogen sulfate in the air. So people are always continuously breathing this in, having respiratory and gastrointestinal problems. It's you know, like I said, it's not just surfers complaining about this. This is a much larger public health issue. All right, I'll share this image. This was one of the early ones. This one actually was published in the San Diego Union Tribune when they did the story on this originally. All right. So this one's called Aldrin, not to be confused with the planet in Star Wars. So this one's 15 times above the EPA standard. Animals exposed to high amounts of aldrin and dieldrin also had nervous system effects. And animals' oral exposure to lower levels for a long period also affected the liver and decreased their ability to fight infections. When I was going out to take these pictures, you can go from the south out by Friendship Park and go. There's a horse path. And as a kid, when I was at Mar Vista, this one summer, I worked as a horse guide. I would actually horseback guide people out, you know, at the rental stables down there. We'd go out to the beach. There's a little horse path. You can go up to the river mouth, or you can go down to the border fence. You can go out that way, down through Dairy Mart Road, or you can come in from the north from Seacoast Boulevard and walk down. Either way, it takes about a mile to walk And you know, there would be days where I would just see like 6 or 7 dead birds on the beach. You know, like how did they die? I don't know. You know, I think, you know, just the stuff that's in the water is it's got to be a contributing factor. I would, that's my hypothesis at least. Um, so and then I've heard of like dead seals being washed up, and you know, sometimes they got big old chunks out of them from the great whites, but yeah, sometimes they're just poisoned from all this nastiness. So yeah, this one's called Aldrin. This is really uplifting stuff, ain't it? Not depressing at all. Okay, come on. All right, this one is another fun fun name. This one's called dichlorobenzene, and it's 1,4 dash dichlorobenzene. It's I think the 1,4 is has to do with the family of that particular chemical. This is 11 times above the EPA standard, and dichlorobenzene might cause a burning feeling in your skin if you hold mothballs or toilet deodorizer blocks against your skin for a long time. So it's the stuff that they put in mothballs, essentially. Where that's coming from, I really don't know. Why that would be, oh, I guess toilet deodorizer blocks is the other one. So that's actually where that's coming from. You ever been to a bathroom in Tijuana? It's usually troughs with those big old blocks everywhere. And I'll give you a hint where that stuff is going. Right out into Imperial Beach. So this is dichlorobenzene. Now, this one here is called chloroform. And the reason I called it chloroform is just like, I always sensed there were these like waves that you would go through as someone chloroformed you and you'd pass out, right? So there's just kind of waves of and then nothingness, right? So yes, there is chloroform in our water. How about that? Fun stuff, right? And I found, you know, going to the photographic kind of aspect of it, I found the right time to be out there was right around sunset, where I would have good light, you know, kind of backlighting everything. So I got this, I have the ability to have these kind of dark and moody images with these specular reflections and little lights here and there and glows and that sort of thing within each image. So I would go out there, you know, walk the mile plus to whichever side of the river I was shooting at the time. Sometimes I'd come from the south or from the north. Just kind of, you know, flip a coin or kind of whatever I felt like doing at the time. If I wanted to, you know, kind of, coming in from the south was a little bit longer of a walk. Yeah, so that was, that's that. I usually like try to get out there, you know, by sunset. Have I looked at these in black light? No, I have not. I have not looked at these stoned or on mushrooms either. Maybe we should take these to like a headshot. What's the place in OB is it still there? Sorry, no, I'm being arrested. So chloroform is found at 10 times the EPA standard. Breathing air, eating food, or drinking water containing high levels of chloroform for long periods of time may damage your liver and kidneys. This one was sponsored by Paloma Aguirre. She is one of the city council members from Imperial Beach. And yeah, so that's chloroform. That is Aldrin. Here's chloroform. This is manganese. So this one is called manganese. And it's sponsored by Betsy Robbins. Betsy's on the call too.
Yay for me!
Hey, there's Betsy. Was there something something unique about the photo that you were drawn to with this one?
I think I like the calmness and the play of light. The dark with the light, and it just gets your imagination going.
Cool.
Yeah. Happy to be here, by the way, bud.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that you made it. That's cool.
My friends are with me too. We're spreading the word. Hello.
Oh, right on. Cool. Yeah, I called this one manganese because if you look at it from this way, it looked like M's. So that was why that one became manganese. Like I said, sometimes it was just super arbitrary reasons. But yeah, so manganese is found at 9 times the EPA standard. This is not as as crazy toxic as some of the other things, but health effects include behavioral changes and other nervous system effects, which include movements that may become slow and clumsy. So, again, just, polluted water. What more can I say? Some of these I started experimenting with kind of the mud and water, and how the sandbar gets reformed by the tidal movements of the river. And I probably showed a couple already that have a lot to do with the mud and reflections off the mud, that sort of thing. But I found that was just as interesting of a kind of subject or thing to focus on as the water textures and things. We got another one coming up here that's really cool. Again, more mud stuff, but it's if you ever go down there, it's absolutely stunning and beautiful, and that's what makes it kind of like a double shame of this the pollutedness of the water, is that it is such a beautiful area. You have the least terns and the snowy plovers that breed there. The last couple times I went down there, I saw leopard sharks in the water, and they'll be, as we're getting in August, they should be out there quite a bit more, right in the slow moving area of the river mouth. And there was an osprey that buzzed right above my head, maybe like 4 or 5 feet right above my head, with a fish in its hooks having lunch, right? So I mean, it's such a real beautiful and magical place to be down there, and it's just a shame that it's as polluted as it is. I'm gonna share my screen. We'll go to manganese. Manganese. Okay. Okay, this one's called iron. Now, iron is found in water, like, you know, it's not that big of a problem, but when it exceeds the, like, you know, normal levels, it can cause algal blooms, which creates a biological oxygen demand. It kills the oxygen, right? And it also smothers fish and aquatic plants, and it produces neurotoxins for the fish and other aquatic animals and plants. So iron is good, but not, you know, not in excess. And right now it's 7, it's almost 8 times above the EPA standard of what it should be. So there are areas where you'll experience algal blooms in the Tijuana River, especially in the Tijuana River channel. You'll see like all this like algal growth along the channel itself. It's quite disgusting. It's, you know, kind of nasty. I think for this one, the reason I named it iron is just it has a steely, like it's almost a dead flat gray through most of this. And I'm sure I could have like done something to like liven it, but you know, at the time I was going for this heaviness, and it just ended up as this like a really interesting steel gray. And I think that's why I went with iron for that one. If you're a black and white photographer for as long as I am, you have many, like, you know how the Eskimos talk about snow, they have like many words for, you know, qualities of snow. That's kind of how like a black and white photographer is, a lifelong black and white photographer. You see a gray and you're like, you describe a gray in like infinite amounts of ways. Neil can probably attest to that, right? Neil, how long you been shooting? Here, I'll unmute you.
Unmute.
There you go. How long you been shooting, Neil?
Early 1960s, probably about 61.
Wow.
A lot of black and white film.
Yeah, for sure. You mean you didn't have digital back then?
Not quite. We worried about every frame. You know, you had to be very careful. You don't want to use up all your frames.
Exactly. You a Tri-X guy?
No, plus X.
Plus X, okay.
Definitely plus X. I like the grain structure better.
I have about a 30-year marriage with Tri-X, and I've deviated. I've used Fuji Pan-X, or what they called Acros for a while, and so Acros was kind of like a mistress on the side for.
Yeah. I bulk rolled all my film normally for years.
Oh wow! Bulk
100 rolls.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen on this. Okay. So John's asking why I decided to shoot this project digitally now with film, because I didn't want to pay for a billion, you know, rolls of film and to develop it all. I think I shot. Let's see here. I could probably tell you how much I shot. Parts per million. Let me look it up. Oh, I'm probably gonna have to do this. 19. I'm gonna tell you how much I photographed for this project. It was more. It was. I think it was about 5,000 images or something like that I shot to get these 28. So it was like a 1% keeper rate. Yeah, I think I figured it out. It was like a 1% keeper rate. So maybe not 5,000, but to get the 28, I think it was close to 3,000 or so that I shot, 3,000 frames to get this. Tom's asking how I did the bursts. Let me share my screen here so we could switch out the photo. Let's see here. I want to be back down. million. Where we at? Iron. The burst is, so on my camera, it has burst mode. It shoots like 4 frames, 5 frames a second, something like that. Oh, that got stuck open. Sorry, there we go. So that's iron. There we go. And this is, okay, bye, Julia. So this one is one of the big ones. This one's a 16 by 24. This is one of the edition prints. This is called uranium. And for this one, it just, the way the glow coming from everything, it just looked nuclear. It just looked radioactive to me. And, you know, after saying that there was uranium in the water, I thought this could be only, you know, this was the only one that could be uranium. So it's a beautiful image. It's one of my favorites. It's kind of funny because there's 28 and all of them are my favorites in some way, but this one is like one of my top favorites. Like they're all 5 stars. All the 28s are 5 stars, but like this one could be like a 5.5 or 6 star. It's in my rating, how I rate the photos when I was going through everything. So this is 7.5 times above the EPA standard. And, you know, there is naturally occurring uranium in water sources and things like that. But again, some of our iron, you know, it can't be too high or it will actually impact the life around it. So natural uranium and depleted uranium have identical chemical effect on your body. So kidney damage has been seen in humans and animals after inhaling or ingesting uranium compounds. This one was sponsored by, or the smaller version, the 10 by 15, was sponsored by Enoch, a friend of mine, a photojournalist friend of mine from San Francisco. Yeah, so this is, again, one of my favorites. And I can see a little bit of a glare popping in from the side now the afternoon sun's coming in. So let me go ahead and share that so you can see a little bit better. So there's uranium. I'll switch out the print to the next one. Okay. This one's called Cobalt. And this was sponsored by, it says Paloma, but I think that was sponsored by Bobby Pretorius, who is a Mar Vista alum. Yeah, Betsy says, your battery life's going down. I know. I'm going to try and get through as quickly as possible. I might have to plug in. Chop it over here. Oh yeah, I might be able to, I should be able to plug in if I need to. So this, yeah, I think Cobalt was sponsored by Bobby Pretorius. Bobby was on the swim and water polo team. She graduated, I think, a year before me, so 93. We've stayed, you know, friends since. Although I don't have many high school friends, friends from high school. So cobalt, exposures to high levels of cobalt can result in lung and heart effects and dermatitis. Liver and kidney effects have also been observed in animals exposed to high levels of cobalt. Again, it's just all this stuff is, you know, like it just affects your health. and, you know, killing kidneys and livers and stuff like that. It's, you know, I'd like to see this, you know, a solution to this before I die. This would be, you know, way before that, because I'd love to surf in Imperial Beach without, like, you know, concern, and the whole town would too. So I'll share this. And that's cobalt. So this one, it's another mouthful. It's diphenylhydrazine. It's a 1,2 diphenylhydrazine, 6.9 times above the EPA standard. So I started at the high end, and now we're getting towards the ones that are a little lower. They're all still above the EPA levels. Yeah. And what's your question here? Is there an impending death that we don't know about? Yeah, funny how we're all dying as we go on. So every day we're dying a little bit more. Man, thought you were coming to like an uplifting art exhibit. Now it's all like morbid and shit. Animal studies indicate that ingesting large amounts can cause death. Ingesting smaller amounts over a longer period can cause damage to the lungs, digestive tract, and liver, and can cause death. So yeah, it's all morbid, but I really hope that the impact from this really you know, spurs people on to, you know, talk about it more, to get this out publicly, so that we're talking about it more and more, and we can come up with solutions. You know, we had such great momentum before COVID. You know, there was senators involved, and, you know, like legislation was being done. We had the new NAFTA was going to include like $300 million to work on new infrastructure to help you know, rectify the situation on the U.S. side. I can't get that straight. So there we go. Need to go the other way. There we go. Yeah, so I'd like to see us regain that momentum. And it's hard with COVID taking over so much of everyone's lives. You know, not just this issue that we're dealing with, but so many other nonprofits and NGOs have had to deal with the momentum that they've built be kind of like, you know, kind of hijacked by the COVID issue. So it's a really unfortunate. And the woman that just logged off, Julia, she works with a lot of nonprofits. I do web development for some of the nonprofits that she works with. You know, like, she realizes and sees that quite a bit too. People aren't giving as much to nonprofits and NGOs as they were before COVID started. So it's impacting everything. It's impacting people that are out there trying to make a difference, you know, in other issues in other areas. So yeah, it's not just this one. It's a really tough situation to be in right now with COVID. I'll share this one and switch to the next one. So this one is diphenylhydrazine. And it was crooked the entire time it was up. Okay, this one, another mouthful, is dibromochloromethane. This is only 5.75 times above the EPA standard. And eating or breathing large amounts of bromoform slows down the normal brain activities and causes sleepiness. Exposure to very high amounts may cause unconsciousness and even death. This one was sponsored by my sister as well. So she really loved these opposing waves that were wrapping in and forming this kind of a cool cross wave action here. So this one was really interesting because the beach is way out here. So the ocean waves are coming in this way. And then the sandbars get so moved and misshaped and newly shaped. And every day I'd go out there, the sandbars looked completely different. The waves sometimes wrap around and refract off of something further in the estuary and then come back and wrap around and kind of collide into each other. So these are really kind of the cool things that I got to see while I was out there, like the sandbars changing daily, and you get there's no like predictability in any of that. Every day you go out there, it'd be something completely random and different. And I think through the seasons and through the years, there probably is a pattern that's formed based off of like kind of the similar swell patterns and things like that. But yeah, it's just so random, and there's the beauty in all of that. So dibromochloromethane. And I am going to run to the other room and grab my charger. So I will be right back. I will leave you with dibromochloromethane. Straight in, and there we go. Now we got juice. The juice is loose. All right. So this one is, I think this one's lead. Yeah, this one's lead, and found at 5 times the EPA standard. And the main target for lead toxicity is the nervous system, both in adults and children. Exposures to high lead levels can severely damage the brain and kidneys in adults and children and ultimately cause death. I don't think you're going to get that at 5 times the EPA standard, but it is, again, one of those another things that, just have all this stuff in our water. And like Alex said before, it does go up through the food chain. Small fish eat bigger fish get eaten by birds, that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's lead. And let's switch up to the next one, which is so this one I didn't quite learn how to pronounce this. It's a phthalate. It's phthalate. It's a phthalate. It's like a plasticine plastic thing. And brief oral exposure to high levels of DEHP, which I guess is how it's abbreviated, damaged sperm in mice. Although the effect reversed when exposure ceased, sexual maturity was delayed in the animals. So, oh, Antoine's heading out. Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for you to be here. It was great for you to be here. Are you missing your picture? You didn't stick around long enough for your picture. It's antimony. So yeah, so this is bis ethylhexyl phthalate. So fun stuff. Let me share my screen so you can see that one. And we're almost done. We got about 6 or 7 more photos. Okay, this one is called bromoform. Isaac, I thank you. I appreciate your kind words. I really appreciate that. So this is bromoform, and it's completely wonky. How about that? All right, there we go. You have ever seen me look at pictures with crooked horizons? You know I just go completely mental. Crooked horizons? What's wrong with you? So bromoform is found at 4.25 times above the EPA standard. And eating or breathing large amounts of bromoform slows down the normal brain activity. This is very similar to the dibromochloromethane. I don't know enough about that stuff, but you know, just enough to kind of name photos of them. So this is bromoform. And I'll share my screen so you can see this a little bit better. There we go. This one is aluminum, and this is sponsored by Valerie Browning. Valerie I met at the Paddle for Clean Water in Ocean Beach. She's a gallerist from New Jersey, and I had a big display that John Morellis, who's on the call here, John printed up these big vinyls that I had, and I mounted them to a big display, and I would have them at like Imperial Beach Sandcastles, and I had the exhibit up at the Paddle for Clean Water. And Valerie saw the big exhibit, and she was like curious about it, and I said, yeah, I've got like a whole like exhibition plan for this. And she's like, hey, I'd love to have this in my gallery back in Jersey. So unfortunately, because of COVID, we were going to plan for that to be in June, and of course that didn't go through. So, but Valerie did sponsor this image here. This is aluminum, and for me, this was it had this kind of molten aluminum feel, like the Terminator 2, right? With the T2, or T1000. Where you just formed, like into different shapes. And that was kind of like the feeling I got from this, is these waves. They weren't even breaking. They were just kind of like loping up onto the sandbank here. And yeah, just beautiful thing. So I'm like, this is definitely aluminum. Had that shiny quality to it. Okay. Oh, so Tom's asking, what, like, how close, what distance was I taking the pictures from, um, and where I found good detail and changes in detail. So most everything was taken with an 85, which on my crop sensor camera is like probably like a 105. So kind of like medium to short telephoto. Um, I would stand normally, like like I would, and I'd be shooting down at these maybe anywhere between 5 and 10 feet away from the subject that I was shooting. Sometimes a little bit closer. I'd be like in the water, like in this particular shot, I was in the water for this. These are probably my footsteps right here, actually. Um, so I'm like sinking in the water, because of the quality of the water. I would go home and I'd scrub pretty good. I'd get in the shower and take a scrub brush and wash off my legs and stuff and feet and yeah, I just didn't want any like you know anything getting into like scratches or open not like I have open sores all the time, but like maybe I got it scratched on my leg and I just didn't want to get bacterial infections. But yeah, anywhere between like 5 and 10 feet usually. There's some that were like a little bit more distant. But yeah, I mean that's kind of where I was. Everything was on the 85. I made that choice pretty early on. I also made the choice not to shoot vertically, so I wanted everything in a horizontal format. And a lot sometimes I do the photos earlier I showed before the parts per million were panoramic. I shoot a lot of panoramics as well, but this particular subject matter, I just wanted everything normal format coming right out of the camera, like a 2:3 format. Let me share my screen for aluminum. Okay, and that one's aluminum. Cool. All right, let's switch this one out. All right, this one is called vanadium. Okay, Neil, thanks for being here. I'll talk to you soon. So vanadium, again, this is one of those ones where I'm like, hey, I like this V shape here, or there, or wherever. So I'm like, hey, let's call this one vanadium. So for vanadium, a number of effects have been found in animals ingesting vanadium compounds, including decreases in the number of red blood cells, increased blood pressure, and mild neurological effects. And vanadium is only found at 3.6 times above the EPA standard. So let me go ahead and share vanadium here. There's that. Okay. Stop share. All right. Cool. So we still got a few people in hanging out. Cool. Right on. This one's cyanide. This one's called cyanide. And this is another one of the 16 by 24s, one of the larger prints here. So cyanide, it's only found at 3.6% or times above the EPA standard, but come on, there's cyanide. Seriously, why is cyanide in the water? That's ridiculous. So some of the first indications of cyanide poisoning are rapid, deep breathing, and shortness of breath, followed by convulsions and loss of consciousness. How fun is that? So this one is cyanide. And this image was pretty cool because I don't know if you could see these little bubbles but those are like little clams and crab holes. And so they'll dig and burrow down in there, and then there's little air pockets, and the air will get released as the water washes over it. It's pretty cool. And you just got these like really cool ripples in the sandbar that create these kind of little turbulent waves as the water kind of washes back in after it's come up the beach. It'll start washing back in off the sandbank and create these really cool, turbulent waves. So 4 more to go. All right, this one is called trichlorothene. And again, this one, there's 3 parts, so I called it I used the trichlorothene for this one. It's 2.85 times above the EPA standard. And relatively short term exposure of animals to trichlorothene resulted in harmful effects of the nervous system, liver, respiratory system, kidneys, blood, immune system, heart, and body weight. So yeah, not much more to say about that. I'll share this one with you. That one's trichlorothene. I appreciate everyone sticking around so far. I know getting through 28 images where you have to focus on each one is, for a gallery, kind of like an exhibition, it's kind of intense. So thanks for sticking around, guys. This one is Antoine and Glenda's print. They didn't stick around to see it, but this is antimony. This is 2.8 times the EPA standard. And this is one of those things where the sandbar gets kind of dried in these like little groovy textured patterns, and then the water just kind of sweeping in, filling those as it comes in. This one's a little, I get a little bit of lens blur as this is coming in. So you see the movement of the water kind of coming in. Ended up being like just a really beautiful image. And I'm glad it ended up with Antoine. So all these are kind of depressing, so I'm going to stop saying the health effects on these. Plus, we're so low at this point. It's at this point it's really about the imagery. So because the EPA, the amount that they exceed are so low at this point. But let me share this one with you. Oh, I guess I was sharing that the whole time. So here you go. Here's antimony, and let me share again. Here's antimony. Cool. This one is DDT. And John, you wanted to talk about my processing and why black and white. So I mentioned earlier that, for, the black and white stuff is mostly because I am a black and white photographer since I was about 14 predominantly. And let me unmute you here so we can have a combo. Yeah, so process-wise, you know, these were shot in color, and I mentioned earlier, I think before you showed up, you know, they're very pretty in color. Some of these are like pretty stunning in color, but the method I was going for was really like a somber quality, you know, because the mood I wanted people to feel with these is that somber gravitas of the situation. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that FedEx truck honking as he's backing up. And if you didn't before, you just did now. So, but I really wanted that weighty, that weighty feeling that people to go through. I don't want them to be captured and enamored by the shiny colors that that you got from this backlit, really kind of colorful imagery here. I wanted that somberness. So that was kind of the why the black and white. Processing wise, I've just come across. I definitely wanted some deepness to this. So a lot of them were like heavy black, really depressed grays. Kind of on the heavy side of the processing. But I mean, you're shooting black and white for so long. You kind of have a little repertoire of where you want to go with the black and whites, like how you want to approach them. So, and I went for the heaviness. So, did that answer your question, or did you have anything else that you wanted to deep dive on?
No, that's good. I just wanted to hear what kind of your thought process was.
Yeah. Thanks. And I gotta thank John also. Really early on, I brought this project to him, and as someone that's never really done conceptual projects or like edition prints or tried to get into a gallery before, I really felt that this was a series that could do that. And early on, John gave me some great advice, not just for the project itself. I think I came to you when I was just a few images in, right? I just had created that concept.
I don't remember exactly where you were with it. I remember you were in the middle of it. You were kind of, you had ideas about galleries, and I think I maybe directed you to. I said, "Hey, go to the beach."
yeah, which was really great advice, because that got the word out way more than, trying to like just pound the pavement and talk to like all 3 galleries in San Diego, right?
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I was probably in the middle of it. I had shot quite a bit, and I had the concept somewhat dialed in. And just I think he gave me some encouragement for the rest of the project, and
Well, I think
some of the images I had in there.
I remember you talking about down in Imperial Beach, and I remember there was the sandcastle thing, and I suggested, hey, maybe you show your work on the beach,
right,
at the sandcastle thing, and then you did a little bit of sort of investigation. You found out about the like the street fair or something they have there at the same time. Yeah.
They ended up doing essentially a pop-up tent, and instead of like having people come in to look at images, you and I created those big vinyl panels that we put on the outside, and have turned it into like an exhibition that people walked around rather than came into. And it was a big hit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's great to hear.
So we got, I think, one more image, and we're done. So let me share this one with you, which is DDT. That's right. What is Silent Spring DDT by Rachel Carson, Alex? I'm not familiar with that. You want to unmute? Here, I'll
Hi guys. Actually, it's scientific research and Silent Spring because DDT affected eggs shells of the birds, and it's a whole generation. They lost whole generation of birds, and this lady, she made that research, and I've learned about this effect in Korea University. So they told us that that's how DDT affects birds. because their shells, they're very sensitive. They become very sensitive, and they're destroying even before birds comes out.
I see. I see. Yeah.
It was used a lot against mosquitoes and like malaria mosquitoes. But I'm wondering how could you find the DDT there if they don't use it anymore? Maybe it's something industrial. They still use those chemicals for chemical processes. I don't know.
Yeah, it is actually quite low. So it's 1.2 times above the EPA standard. So it is quite low levels, but there's probably trace sources in Tijuana that were like.
And also it collects. It's
Yeah.
difficult to remove DDT. It collects in bones in the food chain. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Nice picture. Very good. And thank you very much for this experience. That's amazing.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I mean, it's cool that you're stuck around. And did you see part of this when I talked at Open Show and we met that first time we met at MOPA? Was
Yes.
it on this project or was it on the Fisherman project in Baja?
Fisherman, and I was really amazed how anglers cooperate with the birds and how they clean the fish and they throw parts away and birds eats and they work as a team.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I had this picture of fishermen cleaning their catch on the beach.
Yes,
And
yes.
the pelicans just hung around and waited for them.
Yes, and it looks so natural, like they do it every day, like you have a pet, a pelican as a pet. That was so fantastic, and I think that was my question.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. I was really fortunate to meet you that day. I'm glad we're friends now.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the last image, and this is called chromium. So there are, let's see, I think I got that crooked. Or does it look crooked? It is a little crooked, isn't it? There we go. So chromium is there's hexavalent chromium, which is hex, meaning, like they call it chromium 6. That's the chromium 6 compound. This is just regular chromium that's found in there too. So this is at 1.1 times above the EPA standard. So with all 28 of these contaminants, as long as they were above the EPA limit, I included them in the project. And, just to have 28 images. And so exposure to these compounds, it's a very similar to the hexavalent chromium, but hexavalent chromium is like very, 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 very bad. Causes like serious cancer stuff. This is not as bad when it comes to exposure. Plus, you're dealing with quite a bit less exposure to it. So yeah, this one is chromium, and this was sponsored by my best friend Kareem. We went to Mar Vista together. We graduated in '94, and so him and his wife Natalie sponsored this image, and I'm really excited to get the photos to everybody that sponsored them. It's been about a year since we did the fundraiser, and since we're not going to have any real exhibitions anytime soon because of COVID, I figured this was a good way to kind of honor everybody and get everyone to see the images and get them back out to everybody. So yeah, so that's it. That's all 28, and a couple more that you saw earlier on. We can unmute everybody and maybe have a conversation, Q&A, if anyone has any questions or comments. How can I unmute everybody? Everyone can just unmute themselves and have a chat.
New slogan, unmute yourself.
Yes, unmute yourself and say what's up.
So I have a question. What do you think you learned from all this, besides the specific facts of the toxins?
There's quite a lot. One, I had to learn about all the various entities that are involved in this issue, you know, on both sides of the border, you know, and there's obviously more I know on this side of the border than on the Mexican side of the border. But the deeper you get, you just find out that the deeper it goes. And having a real good solution isn't as easy as, you know, most people think. You're like, oh, you just build a wall, or you just build a dam and have Tijuana deal with it. Well, no, then Tijuana floods in the rain. You know, there's so much. There's just so much that, you know, involved in this. It's because it's an international thing, right? It's what one side does affects the other. You know, and I think I learned a lot of empathy for the people of Tijuana. I mean, I already had that because, you know, growing up in Imperial Beach, you know, me and my buddies would go down to the skate parks when we were 10, 11. You know, because we didn't have skate parks in San Diego back then. You know, we had the big Del Mar one, but that was like way too far north. So we just hop on the trolley and cross. Back then, I don't think you even needed an ID to get back. So, you know, we were 10, 11 years old going down there by ourselves, finding skate parks and stuff, and learning how people lived down there. It was, you know, far different than our, you know, childhood in Imperial Beach, you know, even low middle class, you know, growing up in IB. It was very different down there. So I already had a great deal of empathy for, you know, people that lived in those poor colonias. But going down there and doing some like photojournalistic work and kind of diving a little bit deeper on the sources of the water, where some of this stuff was coming from, really made me like mad that the government of Mexico would allow that to happen to their, you know, their people. That, you know, that normal everyday neighborhoods would be subjugated to toxic levels of hydrogen sulfide, that they like be breathing that stuff in on a daily basis. So that's kind of some of the things that I discovered and learned through this.
Hey, William. First of all, great exhibition. Really enjoyed looking at each photo, you know, in more detail and getting a little narrative about it. Do you know how much water flows in at the very top point after it's treated to a fairly fresh level, like per day, or is like what's the
So you're talking
situation with
about
that?
the treatment plants in Tijuana, the two that are upstream?
Yeah, you said they do a fairly good job, but all of that volume of water is really creating a circumstance. Like, how much water is that per day?
John, I don't know. Do you happen to know, John Radine? Do you happen to know what the two treatment plants put out daily?
No, I don't know what their capacity is, but the background on those, apparently they were built by some of the I think they were built by Japan for some of their factories, and the original plan was to turn the water basically into something that could be reused for agriculture and with further treatment, you know, fresh potable water.
Right.
But there's no market for that right now, and so they're just dumping it into the river. So it's washing down the river, which is, as William mentioned earlier, picking up whatever trash, detritus, you name it, cars, tires,
Yep.
and gets washed down to the river. There is an international treatment plant that can only take in about 20 or so million gallons per day. I think it's 22, 23. So,
and that's not, it's not limited to that. It's just, that's what our treaty says. So the treaty that we have with Mexico is we treat, like John says, about 23 million gallons of water a day. But the flows exceed that. And there's the catchment basins that Mexico has in the Tijuana River Channel are overwhelmed by the amount of flow. So we do treat about 23 million gallons of water of Mexican sewage a day, but we can't catch it all. That's why all these overflows are happening every day.
Right, because you've got the International Wastewater Treatment Plant that's down in the valley, and that's processing it, and it's getting processed and dumped out to the South Bay Outfall, which is off the coast of Border Field, basically. But there is additional flows, renegade flows, broken sewage, et cetera, that Mexico tries to capture with a couple of pump stations. But those mostly get captured if the pumps are working and get sent over the hill south to Punta Bandera,
Yeah.
which ends up going into the ocean farther south.
Pretty.
When the pumps when the pump stations are inoperative, which most of them are right now, they can't capture it, and it runs down the river and into the U.S.
Yeah, I'll show you just quickly where the issues are. It's not just the Tijuana River that we have issues with. So some of those catchment areas. Let me share my screen with you.
Don't build walls, build pumps.
Yeah, and weirs would help, like a semi-high dams that prevent the flows from coming until the catchment basins can work, the pumps. So here's the river, the Tijuana River, which this is one of the biggest issues that we have, because there's only a catchment basin on this side of the border, or on the Mexico side of the border. Let me see if I can pull up a satellite view. And so right here, so I don't know if you guys have ever gone down to Tijuana and gone to like the toll road or Playas de Tijuana. That's this road right here that comes across from the border. You take this bridge. I'm sorry, it's this bridge right here. This is the pedestrian bridge that goes over to Revolucion. So you walk across the Ped West, walk across here, walk across the pedestrian bridge, and you're over by Revolucion. So there's a little catchment basin right here. You see where this river stops, and there's kind of like there's like a little bit of a kind of a dam thing. So that's their catchment basin that's supposed to prevent all the flows from going across the border, but that doesn't do the trick. There's too much flow right now, so that thing is overwhelmed. And then going along the border here, so this is all Tijuana River, and this is the reclamation plant. This is where this is the international treatment facility. So some of the water gets brought here, but the Tijuana River just goes right by it. So it's not being, we have no other way to capture this water that comes across from the Tijuana River. That's the only thing that catches the water, is this little catchment basin here. And a little further down, we have Smuggler's Gulch, which is, there's this canyon. This canyon goes pretty far upstream. So this whole watershed right here comes down through here and then spits out on this side into an area called Smuggler's Gulch. Then this joins up with the Tijuana River over here. So this is like a waterway, essentially. When it's raining, this is usually, if you watch the news and you see, there's usually have like a picture of like water going over the road. They take that picture right here. So when it's heavy rains and they're talking about like the border, sewage stuff, that they usually take a picture right there of the water coming across the road. And here's Goat Canyon. This is actually, when I was in high school, this is where we had that horse stable that I worked at one summer. So we actually had like before Goat Canyon sediment control and capture system was put in, there was a ranch there. I think it was called Sandy's. And I worked there for one summer giving horseback guides. And there's another little canyon over here called Yogurt Canyon. Water comes in from over here. and then mixes down in this estuary, and then all that water just kind of comes out over here at the river mouth.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea like how much, so say this problem was fixed magically somehow tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, right. But if it was, like, how much residue is left in those overflow areas that would still be an issue if it rained, you know, very heavily on the American side?
Well, there's probably 5 or 6 decades, John Rendine, of stuff in the Tijuana River Valley.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff has been going back to the 70s. The one thing that people don't realize is that when you look at the Tijuana River watershed, approximately 1/3 of it exists in the United States north of the border. 2/3 of the area actually exists into Mexico.
Yeah.
So when you have rain, you may have rain, say in the United States, it won't get farther south. We'll get rain, but it'll run through Mexico and back to the US. Other times we'll have no rain. There will be rain in Mexico, and we'll get a large flood. And again, all the solutions right now that are proposed will not stop all the water coming through because it is a seasonal river. When it rains, we get, you know, water running through the river. They're going to try to stop most of it, but there are going to be certain rain events where it's going to exceed even the proposed capacity that, and many of the projects that have been proposed by the EPA and others. So, yeah, it's going to be a ongoing situation.
Yeah, there's some groups are asking that the EPA look at certain areas of the Tijuana River Valley as EPA super sites. Is that the right word? Where they, you know, come in and, you know, completely abate the
Oh, you mean like a Superfund site?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and treat it as such, where they come in and you know, look at. I mean, there's, you know, decades of sediment, and the Border Patrol is currently working on a sediment study. So they've done their water quality study, which is where all this information comes from. But they wanted to look at the sediment as well and see how deep these chemicals are, and because, you know, when the Border Patrol are out there, they're working in this area. Sometimes they have to make acquisitions or rescues of people that are stuck in the mud or the water. Sometimes when it's raining, people get stuck on little islands in the Tijuana River Valley and have to be rescued. So the Border Patrol are putting their life on the line, you know, for these, you know, instances, and, you know, they get repaid with skin eating bacteria and you know, things like that. So respiratory issues. There's multiple documented cases of Border Patrol's agents having to go to, like, you know, create health insurance claims because the stuff that they're working around.
And the people that are getting stranded would be like illegal immigrants, right? Trying to cross over, or are people getting stranded on the American side at all when the flood's over there?
It's usually on the American side where they're making these rescues. It is illegal immigrants or undocumented workers, undocumented individuals coming across. You know, not knowing the area really well. You know, you're like, there's ranchers and there's still some horse stables down there. There's still like rental areas down along Monument Road and Saturn Boulevard, where you know, people are kind of familiar with what happens when it floods. You know, there's been some serious flooding in that, you know, in that valley too. 80s, people lost horses. Yeah, there's been some serious flooding down there. So when it floods, it can be kind of dangerous. You know, heavy rains in the winter. Yeah. So,
William, I have a question.
sure.
First, I wanted to ask that this topic is so important, and I wanted to ask what's your next step, but while you explain what's going on, one idea appeared in my mind, and here is the thing. Some of your pictures, they look like macro shots of tissues or cells.
Hmm.
I have a biochemistry background, and I remember those, you know, they're on a piece of glass. They just cut the tissue, and you can use microscope and look at it. So some of them, they really remind me. So how about this idea? When I will come next time to your place,
Yeah.
we'll find some doctors, and if they allow us to photograph through the microscope, and we can combine pictures. Here is the water where you explain the disease, when you explain the effect, and here is the effect in action on our physiology and anatomy.
Yeah.
And you can combine them. And I think that makes more impact because when you look at the water and you listen about some chemicals, yeah, it does make sense. But when people see, that's how it affects,
Right.
and that's how it looks like. It's like metamorphosis.
Mhm.
We can bring more attention to this problem from community, and people start talk about it more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So to
That's a
see
really
that
cool
hidden
idea.
part of the water, yeah.
It's a really cool idea. I like the idea of maybe just having the whole exhibit done through microscopes. So you have to look at each picture through a microscope.
Some of them, some of your pictures, they really look like that piece of glass with the tissue look
Yeah.
under the microscope.
No, that's
Really.
really cool. I do have a an idea for my next project around this topic. I don't want to get into it too much because it's kind of I'm keeping it secret for now because it's
Good.
really cool idea.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. Pictures are amazing, and makes me think about it.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad. I'm glad. Looks like John Morella signed off. Cool, and Glenda did too. No, any other questions, Kelly or Betsy? I see you guys are hanging out. Betsy's on the beach apparently. Looks like she's hanging out at like maybe Windansea, not Windansea, like Swami's.
Del Mar.
Del Mar. Oh, it looks like you're on the reef on low tide at Swami's.
No, this is an old picture of Del Mar.
Okay. Cool. I'm glad you made it. Any questions?
I like your friend's idea.
Yeah. Alex? Yeah.
The slides would look like.
Yeah.
Association with reason and result, and the open question for people, for community. Okay, folks, what's the solution? Here is the reason, result. What's the solution?
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Wait till you see what I come up with. I have to wait until COVID's over though, because it's going to be all portrait based work. So, and I want people being comfortable being photographed and being with other people around. So, yeah. But I've got a really good idea. I need to. That one's going to rely heavily on some science that I don't know how to do yet. It'll be a new photographic technique. New photographic printing technique. So,
Are you
Can't
still
wait.
in-person exhibit of this someday?
what's that?
Still gonna do an in-person exhibit like of this when you're able to do that?
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe what I might do is for the next project that I have, whenever we can start having like real like in-person exhibitions again, I'll have that and maybe have some of these images there as kind of like a secondary kind of a body of work that, and maybe not the whole series, maybe not all 28, so that the other project I have is like center stage, and this is just kind of like a secondary, kind of like a body of work about the same subject, you know. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, but I mean, I've got other projects that I could be working on in the meantime.
Sure.
So, but yeah, this is, yeah. So we'll see. How about you, Kelly? You've been kind of quiet. Oh, Luan is here. feel free to unmute yourself and say hi, ask questions. Kelly's being shy, or she already left and like peaced out. Okay, cool. Well, they're not going to say anything, so maybe we should call it quits. I thank everyone for showing up and sitting around for 2 hours looking at photos with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, William.
Thank you. Great.
Thanks everyone for being here. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message on Facebook or wherever. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Again, thank you. It was an honor and a privilege to be hanging out with you for the afternoon and showing you kind of what I've been working on the last year or so. Yeah.
Thanks for what you do, William.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Have a
Later.
wonderful day.